Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chapter 12. In Chapter 12, we're going to talk about deploying law enforcement resources and improving productivity. So the first question as an organization that we're going to ask is how, when, where, and how much manpower are we going to utilize and why, right? We don't just willy-nilly throw officers out there and say, fight crime. There has to be a method to the madness. So one of the ways that we can determine how best to use our manpower and to distribute our manpower is using police logs. And what that's going to do is it's data collection over a period of time. That's going to collect all the calls that come in, and it's going to, it's usually done by software, and it's going to say, okay, these are what the calls that are coming in for. This is geographically where we see most of the calls coming from. And then you're going to look at that data and say, okay, well, let's deploy more officers here because we get more calls from this location. So that's one way. Keep in mind, police agencies divide their officers up into 3 8-hour shifts. Okay, so there's first, second, and third shift because they have to provide coverage 24 hours of the day, every day of every year, right? Some agencies will do longer shifts and fewer days on for their officers, but officer fatigue becomes more of an issue. So they typically stick with that 8-hour shift. I want to talk about proportionate assignment. That is exactly what it sounds like. That we're going to assign officers proportionally to where the calls are located for police help. So if it's, like, again, we're going to get back to that geographic location, that this is the area that has a lot of calls, this one has none. We're not going to put a ton over here where there's no calls, right? Response time is super, super, super important. Agencies want to be known for their response time, but they want to be known for their good response time. You don't want to be known for your bad response time. And certainly delayed response times are egg on the face of an organization. It's very bad PR that somebody calls the police, help, I'm being robbed, or my company's being robbed, whatever, and response time is 17 minutes. Well, hey, thanks. I'm glad you guys came after the fact, but you didn't get here to catch the bad guys or to interrupt them threatening my physical safety, etc. So response time is very, very important. But there are also a lot of barriers that are out of the control of law enforcement that can make response time super duper long. And these are going to be things like inclement weather, natural disasters, understaffing, right? You simply don't have the manpower, which is where we see a lot of a really big time lag in that response time. The number of calls that you're getting. I mean, maybe you have plenty of staff, but you're getting a ridiculous amount of calls. Maybe something happened in the area, right? Maybe there was some sort of, natural disaster and everybody's calling and you just don't have enough officers to go around. One thing we never want to do is sacrifice officer safety to a good response time. So while a good response time is very important and it's a metric by which the community often grades law enforcement, you never want to put an officer in danger trying to get there as fast as possible if you are not able to safely do so. That is not something that we are willing to sacrifice. Also want to talk about the lag time, and the lag time is the time that elapses between the incident and the time that the police are called. So if I'm getting robbed at my business, I want to call right away, because the longer the lag time between the time the incident happened and the time I call the police for a response, the less successful the outcome is going to be. Right, so you need to call right away, and that's something that we need to get the community to understand. We need to minimize that lag time. I want to talk about some different kinds of patrol that are, based in terms of how do we use our manpower. And the first thing we're going to talk about is random preventative patrol. This is where officers walk the beat, right? And we want to make sure, you got to remember that criminals, this is their job, right? They refine it, they learn it just like anybody else. And if we know an officer walks the same beat, the same time, every single night, well, crime is just going to relocate. You're going to say, why would I do it here if Officer Friendly is always coming down the street at 10:30 at night? All right, I'm going to go 4 blocks over where there is no Officer Friendly. So we want to do random preventative patrol, which distributes officers at different areas so that the crime presence it can't begin to predict where the police are and relocate. If it's random and we don't know where they're going to be at any given time, it makes it much harder for crime to concentrate in given areas. We also have directed aggressive patrol, and this is a departure from random prevention. This is where officers and cruisers are going to be deployed to problem areas, areas where we know there's a strong density of crime. And the more officers we put in those problem areas, the more familiar those officers will become with the environment, with the people who work there, the people who live there, the people who engage in crime there on a regular basis, what happens there, what shouldn't be happening there. Essentially, they become so familiar with the environment that they develop a keen eye and a recognition for something's amiss. This is out of the ordinary. You're not supposed to be here. Or, hey, I arrested you 3 weeks ago for X, Y, and Z, and it looks like you're doing something, versus if I'm on that geographic location for the first time, I have no idea who you are if you're doing something, right? It's knowing your environment and being able to recognize when things are amiss. Also understand that there are many different ways to deploy manpower. There's many different kinds of patrol. There's foot patrol, there's mounted bike patrol, there's automobile, there's motorcycle, there's all kinds, right? What kind of patrol is going to that's utilized is going to depend on the terrain largely and the circumstance. So, for example, when you have large groups of people and large gatherings, even large protests, and it's getting out of hand or it's getting unruly, one of the best ways to dissipate the crowds, or any crowd, it's going to be mounted patrol, right? People won't listen to the cops telling you to go on, move on, get out of it. They're not going to listen to you, but they will not stare down a horse, right? When a horse is headed for them, they're going to move on. They're going to get out of the way, which is why the kind of patrol that you choose is very circumstantial, right? You want to figure out what is the context of the patrol that we're going to be doing and what would be the best way to apply patrol for whatever our objectives are. Let's talk about 1 officer patrol versus 2 officer patrol. So obviously 1 officer is going to be cheaper, right? It's a cheaper use of resources. And believe it or not, a single officer patrol, and it sounds counterintuitive, tends to be safer than having a partner with you. It doesn't make sense at face value, right? You figure if I have a partner, I've got 2 sets of eyes, we've got 2 sets of weapons, you've got my back, I've got your back. But what we actually find is when you have 1 officer that is just by him or herself, they become more observant, they're more attentive, right? And they tend to be more cautious in the way they execute their job duties. With two officers are more likely to be physically attacked, they're more likely to be injured, and they're more likely to have an individual who is non-compliant with arrest versus 1 officer. So it's not what you would expect out the door, at face value, but the data says those single officer units tend to be safer. And because that's what the data say, it might be, it should influence the way an organization deploys its manpower. Civilianization is another way of managing manpower. And what that means is bringing in civilians, non-officer personnel, to do jobs that civilians can do. They don't need to go to the academy. They don't need training. They don't need to carry a firearm. They can do those jobs, and it takes it off the plate of law enforcement, so law enforcement can go do other jobs that civilians can't do, right? So civilianization is just outsourcing those functions. So things like animal control, dispatching, and so forth, that literally you're taking the officer manpower and putting it where it belongs. And over here, if there's a job that a non-officer can do, let's do that, because this non-officer can't go out and walk the beat and arrest people, right? So it's using your manpower as much as you can. Let's talk about deploying resources to fight crime. A really new method, sort of the new sexy technique, is crime mapping and determining where geographic hotspots of crime exist. And literally that's, you take a month of arrests and there's computer software for this. It's called GIS mapping. And you're going to input all the data of where the arrest occurred, what kind of arrest it was, what time it happened. And then you're going to do that for all the arrests in a month. And you're going to put it up on a screen and you're going to say, where are the concentrations of crime? Where are the hot spots? Then you're going to redeploy your manpower accordingly. Another thing that is often focused upon is what we call the crime triangle. This is also known as routine activities theory. If you take my theory class, we go into much more specific detail on routine activities theory. But this is the theory that it was put forth, is that there is something called a crime triangle. That in order for crime to happen, 3 elements must converge in time and space. that if you disrupt any one of those elements, crime cannot happen. So what are those three elements? It's a very basic equation. It's a motivated offender, so somebody who is ready and willing to commit a crime, plus a suitable target, right? And that target can be anything from, it's money, it's cars, it's a victim, it's whatever is the target of the crime. So it's motivated offender plus a suitable target minus a capable guardian. Okay, so a capable guardian would be someone or something. It doesn't have to be a person, by the way. Somebody who can interrupt that victimization or that crime from happening. Capable guardians can be dogs, right? When they start barking and it's like, whoa, whoa, I just lost the element of surprise, I'm out of here. Or that dog's attacking me, I'm out of here, I'm not going to attack this person or rob this house. It can be an alarm system. It can be a firearm that you carry and pull on someone who is attacking you, right? So a capable guardian can be many different things. But the equation is a motivated offender plus a suitable target minus a capable guardian equals crime. Okay, that is your crime triangle. If you can disrupt any one of those three things that come before the equal sign, you can stop crime from happening. Okay, if you can do that, crime doesn't occur. So that is another very law enforcement friendly theory that's utilized to deploy manpower and resources. Let's talk a little bit about the use of law enforcement in terms of disaster and emergency. Typically, in terms of disasters and emergencies, which can come in all shapes and forms, it can be Mother Nature, it can be terrorism, it could be a hazardous materials spill on a highway. A truck or tanker was just moving chemicals, got into a car accident, rolled over, boom, you've got a serious spill that's very dangerous and threatening, needs to be managed, needs to be cleaned up. Emergencies and disasters can happen in all shapes and forms. And the first responders are almost always local law enforcement, right? Which is certainly a lesson we learned on 9/11. That yes, we have a Department of Homeland Security, but the people who are going to be on ground first in the face of a terrorist event are going to be local law enforcement. So the idea here being that most agencies have a pre-developed and a pre-written plan for situations and responses long before this happens. You don't want to wait until this happens because it will be chaos and the deployment of manpower and resources will not be effective, right? Or certainly will not be as effective as it could be if you had a pre-existing plan of response, right? So most agencies do have this pre-existing plan of response. And when law enforcement gets onto the scene, how do they figure out what to do? We talked about this a few chapters back. They're going to assess the scene and they're going to triage. They're going to look at the circumstance and say, okay, what is the biggest, most immediate problem that needs our attention immediately? And thereon after, all the way down to the ones that can wait until we can get to it.